Hey, good afternoon everyone, Trackman44 here. Hey, a couple of weeks ago or so, I kind of got into talking about some of the theory behind burning wood and everything, and also kind of cleaning the chimneys and all that stuff. But one thing I didn't really get a chance to talk about was the different kind of wood-fired appliances there are. There's a myriad of appliances. There's big stoves, little stoves, there's furnaces, there's everything under the sun, and every one of them have different characteristics. Every one of them have different physical sizes, and every one of them have different characteristics that you have to figure out for yourself how to use that for the application that you're using it in. But there was a number of questions, and one of the questions that was kind of intriguing to me, and I never thought to address it. One of the fellows said, "Where does your combustion air come from?" Well, every wood-fired appliance, I guess you can see right here down at the bottom, you see a series of holes down here at the bottom, and then there's a lever here in the front. That's a slide back and forth. Well, those holes will open and close depending on the position that you move the slide to increase or decrease the amount of combustion air that gets into this particular appliance. In addition to that, some of them have outside air come in, from the heat chamber. We'll get to that. And some of them actually require or suggest that you cut an opening in the side of your house, so to speak, and literally pipe a duct over to the vicinity of the combustion air inlet of the furnace. Typically those are going to be downstairs, not a fireplace up in your living space. But going back to some of them drawing combustion air from the outside, this particular one here, you can't see it, but I'm sticking my fingers right inside it right here. There's a slot that goes completely from one side to the other inside this firebox, and that has got a pipe that goes all the way to the outside, and it's actually bricked into the chimney. This here is a lever right here that's attached to a damper inside that, and you just twist that damper to open or close the amount of combustion air that you want entering the appliance. The reason, the thought behind having this air up here is because cold air drops whenever your fire is burning. The hot air is going up the chimney, and the cold air wants to drop, and so what will happen is it'll flood the inner surfaces of your glass front doors. It'll flood that, and it'll actually create that pattern that'll be drawing the smoke, the natural smoke, out of your fire and up the chimney, instead of wanting to boil out the front when you open your doors. That's simply because there's a steady cold supply of air coming in here and dropping down to provide additional combustion air for combustion. If you don't have that, then of course you've got provisions down here in some type of damper, whether it's just a screw opening, a pair of screw openings or something like that actually open and close, or if it's a manual slip and slide like this particular one is here. What I actually wanted to kind of tell you tonight is talk to you about banking your stove for the evening, or for the night. So many times people say, well, yeah, I got to keep that green wood, because I want to keep my fire going. We talked about this in the last video. That's to your detriment because you're wasting so much energy heating up that wood to dry the moisture out before it can get warm enough to release the gases to burn. So you want to burn as dry wood as possible. Well, you say, how can you sustain or maintain a fire all night with exceptionally dry wood? Well, it's how you bank your stove or your furnace. Now, go back to that statement I said where every one of your stoves, furnaces, every one of your appliances have different characteristics. Depending on the characteristics of your appliance, you may not be able to do what I can do here. But I'm going to show you exactly what I do in order to bank the stove. The old timers always called it banking your stove. And typically that generally meant you just come in and you just bank it completely full, so it'll just rip roaring hot and burn all night long. Get up in the morning, you still got coals. But that's not necessarily the case, depending on what kind of appliance it is that you have. If you notice my little pile of wood right here, you're going to see that there's all kinds of different wood. There's limb wood, branches and everything, There's larger splits, and there's even bigger of the larger splits mixed in within the pile. The real good high-efficiency gas furnaces actually adjust their BTU capacity based on outdoor temperature or how rapidly your structure loses heat in extreme cold temperatures. In other words, the real good ones modulate the gas supply being consumed, because on a 45-degree day, you don't need the full capacity of a 100,000 BTU furnace, so to speak, picking 100,000 as a general number. You do not need 100,000 BTUs at full capacity in order to heat your structure, because you're not losing that much heat that quickly. So what you can do, you can modulate the amount of gas that burns in that gas-fired appliance to match or meet the demands of what the house is losing in heat during the course of the temperature changes. If you can do that electronically, and mechanically in the gas-fired furnaces, you can do the same thing with your wood-fired appliance. Okay, you got a mild day, there's no reason to use chunks of woods that's big enough to just literally have a monstrous fire going. You just don't need to have that. This is when you want to select your smaller pieces like that and keep a hot but a smaller fire going and let it go out a couple of times during the day. It's no big deal. All it takes is a little bit of time to build another fire, and chances are you're going to have enough coals in there, it's going to go ahead and reignite itself anyway. Go ahead and use those smaller pieces because you don't need that 100% capacity of that wood-fired appliance. When it gets really cold at night, or it's going to get cold at night, then you use the bigger pieces and everything, to provide that additional heat in the capacity in which the appliance is designed. Okay, now, how do you make dry wood last all night? Back to that old timer saying about banking your stove for the evening. You notice I got a bed of coals over here on this side right now. That's because it's mild. It's mild outside. It's only 48 degrees or something. It's not cold at all. I've had just a very small fire in here, just enough to kind of keep the goals going and enough to keep the flue temperature up and everything all day long, or at least the missus has anyway. Tonight, I'll go ahead and stack my wood all the way up on this side right here. I'll leave a space in the middle, and I'll stack another set of physically larger pieces of wood on this other side right here with that space in between. Okay, there's no coals underneath that side. All the coals are over here on this side. No coals under this side means it's not going to start elevating the temperature of that wood stack on the right-hand side. It's going to rely on being exposed to the radiant heat from the fire that's actually burning on this side to heat this over here to get it warm enough to start releasing the gases so it can burn. So what does that mean? That means you're actually limiting the amount of heat that's coming out of it by a mere fact that it can't get it started to burn. It can't burn because it has to rely on the increase in temperature from just half the furnace being in production. But in the meantime, that half the furnace or half of the appliance being used, your heat output is greatly reduced. But it'll be enough to match your house, as long as you pay attention to how you build your fire, what kind of wood you're using to build your fire, and how much you put in at a particular time. I don't know if you guys watch some of my wood splitting videos. Occasionally I refer to some pieces that are a little bit oversized. I don't care. I throw them right on in if they're a little bit oversized. I like to call those nightsticks. That's kind of a play on terms, but those nightsticks are the nice, heavy, physically larger, and a little more dense material that I like to use to bank my appliance at night, and that'll be the one that'll be over here on the opposite side of where the fire is, so that it'll ignite later. Hell, it won't even start burning until 2.5 or 3 hours after I close everything up and go to bed, because it takes that long for it to radiate that heat and elevate the temperature. But in the meantime, by not stacking it full of wood, we're not overheating the house because we're burning just that lesser amount. I don't know, it's kind of confusing, it's very difficult for me to explain, but that's exactly what's happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you exactly what I do right here. Let's see, here's some small pieces right here. That's the bed of coals and everything in there. It'll take a little while for this to go ahead and light off. Now it's too early in the evening, so I'm not going to bank this all the way up, but I'm going to give you an idea of what it is that I do. And bear in mind, there are no coals over here on this other side. That's just about 1.5 inches of pure ash over there. You're selectively how you place those in here, because you want that air to draw up through there and create that movement that draws that heat across as many different surfaces of the wood as possible to heat it as evenly as possible everywhere you can. So say I go ahead and stack this side here all the way up to the top, just that half, leave a big space here in the middle, and then I selectively pick pieces like this guy right here that's very dense. This is an ambrosia maple. This is a curly maple or an ambrosia maple. So what I'll do is I set that all the way over here on the side like that with a little bit of a space, because that's the way it is. Come in here with another nice square easily, and that's another reason why I split the wood square as much as I can. It just helps me. It helps me in the way I like to burn my fires. Okay. Now this will be just a little bit wider down here to the bottom, but I'll still have a space 4 to 5 inches in between this side here. As soon as it gets warm enough, it's going to take off and burn. That side over here it'll be 2.5 or 3 hours before this side over here ever starts burning. But again, it's a mild evening. I don't have to worry about a tremendous amount of heat, and this is how I'm limiting the ability of my appliance to give me heat to maintain my temperature in my house much more evenly. This is a version of banking your stove for the night, or your appliance for the night. Yours, unless you're blessed with a wide heat chamber like this one here, you're probably not going to be able to do it. There's a lot of the Dutch Wests and everything, the really high efficient catalytic burning stoves. You know, they have just a little bitty old fire pot. You know, you can't put anything near like that in those. You can't burn it like this at all. But then again, and there's furnaces that are very similar to this right here, that you can do that widthwise and also lengthwise. There's another variation that you can do too, believe it or not. You can do this exact thing right here, but if it's already warm in your house, and it's just time to go to bed, but it's already warm in your house, what you can do is you can just scoop your coals off to the side, build up this side over here, then scoop the coals that you scooted over to the side and throw them on top of the stacked wood on this side without them being anything on the bottom at all. Put them on the top. Then go ahead and bank the other side just like I showed you right here. And you know how heat rises? Well, if you have your coals on the bottom, it's heating everything from the bottom up. It's heating everything a little bit at a time, and it burns a little bit more quickly, evenly. But whenever you start the fire from the top down by putting the coals in on the top of it, it slows the rate at which this side here will burn, and will even extend the burn time even that much longer. The combination of lighting the fire or burning the fire from the top down on the left-hand side, plus the space in between the two, delaying the ignition of the second half of the banking, will extend that burn time tremendously. Now again, it's too early in the evening for me to leave this up here, so I'm going to pull this side of it back out and leave this little part over here. Go ahead and take off, because you know the sun has gone down. It is getting a little bit chilly, but it's way too early for me to do this. That's just another tidbit into the thought processes behind figuring out what it is you've got in an appliance and figuring out how to use that to your benefit, to burn the least amount of wood possible, to give the greatest efficiency, so to speak, of the amount of wood that you do burn, and burn it in a safe manner to where you don't create an issue within the appliance or within the flue to that appliance. That having been said, you know what? Unless I can think of something else, this is Tractor Man 44, and I'm out of here, guys.